also trying to I make this joke. I'm trying to achieve singularity, which is this idea that can I make everything from start to finish, album wise, in one room? Like, can I do it all on my own?
There's a lot of imposter syndrome that comes with doing these kinds of jobs. But I just think like now, I've reached a place where like maybe my fucks level is kind of like reaching zero. I know you don't appreciate when I ask you questions, so it ain't fair when I wonder who's invisible to your hair. This time, I promise I won't mention all that stuff online. Thought I was done, turns out though I'm a paranoid son of a gun.
If nothing, I'm just gonna use my Zoom camera, honestly. Sure. For the audience, the reason I'm compromising so much is because apart from some airlines don't let you carry some things. I don't know.
Just put in the check-in, no? Next time.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. Why did we not take the check-in? Oh yeah, because it was too heavy and you have to pay extra for the check-in. So we just entered. Hey, British Airways, really love you guys, but you didn't let me do a professional podcast. Yeah. Man, if I had done the podcast in the plane, that would have looked better. I swear. To kick things off with a great start, let's talk about the most recent thing that we have here, and that's your new single, Small Victories, which is also, it's kind of like a revisit to your first ever EP that is also called Small Victories.
Yeah. It might seem like it was an intentional move to write a song called Small Victories. I suppose that's only half true. The reality is, yes, that I had an EP in 2014 called Small Victories, which really kind of was the first like formal professional thing I'd ever put out in music. And and I think because of the people involved, and especially Warren Mendonça, plus my bandmates who are already quite known like stalwarts in the indie whatever music scene here in Bombay, who I had known of before and revered. I think because of the kind of people that I was working with, the album itself got a bit of a head start. Like it got a bit of a boost. If I was completely doing this on my own and didn't do anything prior to that, like I had just moved to Bombay, so it would not have had that many people kind of interested in the album. So I was quite grateful to them, and the album really helped me start doing music more professionally. And 3 months or 4 months after the album came out, I quit my job and I said, okay, cool, I'm gonna give this like a proper go. So the album came out 10 years ago, and then we were approaching that date this year. I was like, yeah, we should definitely look at it again and give it this whole remaster and reissue it. But I was thinking that why keep it an EP? Maybe we can flesh it out into a full album. And then some of the songs that I didn't have a place for, which we used to play back then, they weren't terrible songs, they weren't great songs, but they were like very important songs for my development as a songwriter. So I said, okay, cool, let's clean them up, let's add that to the album. And then just to top it off, I was like, okay, cool, what if we wrote a new song for this album? And just as I was writing it, it felt right to call it Small Victories. I also felt like that's the only like album that doesn't have a title song. So I was like, okay, cool, let me write this out. And the way it turned out was kind of sweet. It basically was perfect, like for what I was looking for at the time. So it kind of achieved many goals in one one throw. Like it was a title song. It spoke about the album itself, and it was the the fitting kind of tribute I wanted for my friends and my band, and people who have just wanted to listen to my music for 10 years. So it kind of worked out in the way that it did.
It's a nice visit away from the mainstream music when you get to hear like new tunes.
Yeah,
It's
it is
it's a nice thing because
no, yeah, it is a kind of a classic kind of song. in the sense that, I've not done like too much production or anything on it. Like I've not really done anything like super electronica or anything like that. It's mostly just drums, bass, keys, guitar, like very old school. um and yeah, I wanted to keep it that way. I didn't want to like mess with it. I didn't want to make it like sick or like hip or whatever. It was just supposed to be kind of a straight up like pop rock song. But that, I wanted to let the lyrics kind of shine, the the essence of what the song is about. I wanted that to come through without any like, no muss, no fuss. So yeah, so it is kind of throwback. I also wanted it to sound like it was originally meant for that album, so from 2014. So that was definitely part of my the that was part of the agenda with the song. Don't mess around with it too much. Just keep it pretty straightforward.
It's nice. Sometimes simple is the best because that's the one that helps you get in the flow the most.
You're right. I think that is very true. I usually like to have my songs quite complex and structurally, sonically, because I want to also push the envelope, at least for myself, if not just in the singer-songwriter space from India. So yeah, this was nice to kind of just lean back and just do like a simple kind of song. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really nice when you know what to focus on, like in a song, and that's the type of stuff I really like. Your music especially, it kind of really grows on me. Like I
Nice, man.
first discovered you, I think, yeah, it was from the Archies movie. I think a lot of people
Yeah,
discovered you
yeah.
from the Archies movie, and yeah, I mean, of course, like I didn't know it was your voice, but then I saw you in the
Yeah.
artist section, and I'm not sure what made me search you up on Instagram, and I kind of it. I don't know what it was, but I'm glad I found you. And
I'm very glad that you did, because the whole point of doing the Archies or something like that, I mean, I suppose it was twofold. One was, yes, of course, it was such an incredible opportunity for me to be part of like a very, very mainstream kind of, cultural touch point, for so many people. Everybody knows, these movies that Zoya Akhtar makes. Everybody knows the Archies. So in like many ways, it was a right decision for me. The other thing was that, yeah, it was, I hoped that if people did enjoy the music, they would look me up. And some people just enjoy the songs and that's it. And some people want to kind of explore more and say, okay, cool, there's a new voice that I've not heard before. You are a good example of that. And if that can lead to some kind of crossover to, oh, okay, cool, I kind of like this guy's vibe, he has his own music. And then, yeah, I suppose it was a success in that regard.
yeah, it's really great when the vibe kind of flows into your other songs as well. That's kind of what I've
Yeah,
noticed. So also, yeah,
yeah, for sure.
you want to talk about museum as well? I think we are a bit like to not very on point, on time with the museum release, but how about we talk about that? I like the name.
No,
I like the
absolutely.
concept.
It only just came out this year, so yeah, it's still pretty new for us. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking about it. It's actually probably some of the most important work I feel like I've ever done. Musically, thematically as well. I mean, yeah, I've spoken about how it is about my father who passed away a few years ago, and it served as a kind of a reconciliation, for me with him, uh, because I wanted to address it. I actually didn't plan really to, I didn't know I was going to be writing about my father. I didn't know how great the emotion would be that it would force me to write. Sometimes, when you're like overloaded with emotion, it's very hard to write about that. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
you don't know where to go, you don't know how to focus that energy. Um, so I was very lucky that I had a conceptual way of approaching it. The first thing I had to do was kind of like step away from how I usually write music, which is like, yes, it's still all very, pop, English pop territory. But the thing I needed to kind of dress this music, the clothes, in which I had to dress the music up in, was this Indian kind of aesthetic, this folk element that I had never done before. And the moment I put myself in those waters like that I was not really familiar with, it allowed me to kind of have like a way to focus this. If I was just doing, songs that were regular, like for my style, it would have been a little harder. I think the Indian classical elements, the sarangi, some of the sampling that I did, So those elements really helped me kind of focus the album into what it was. So yeah, I'm very proud of it. I think it's some of my most like polished work in that regard. And I think it's also very personal. The story is quite personal, so I think a lot of people have related to it. And the other part of it is that the rest of it is not out yet. So like half of the album is still remaining. The full length album is still remaining. Just the EP is out. So I'm quite looking forward to the rest of that journey, and that should be out sometime next year. So yeah.
Sorry to hear about your dad.
Yeah.
So the full album is not made yet.
I mean, it's made. It's just waiting. I wanted to put out how like most people in most artists in the generation are releasing singles.
You're kind of waiting for the
And
entire album.
yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with releasing singles. In fact, I told my management I didn't want to exactly release a single. I want to release a bit of a short story, if you will. So the EP that I released has a bit of an intro, it has an outro, it has a side, and it has a B side. So I thought that was like the right way to approach it. And yeah, I just told them that instead of releasing a single, let me just release it in this small little 10-minute EP. It won't be too much time from people. Let them experience it all together. And I think it helped because it kind of set the tone for what it was like. It set the mood for it, and it had a little bit of weight to it, just enough to kind of present what the story that I wanted to. And now, of course, the rest of the album that is still pending, that's going to be more of it's still going to be about this familial territory, which is like about relationships between two generations. But I've kind of, there's more to it. It's like inspired by, Shakespeare. There's like a bit of Hamlet like stuff that, that I've really enjoyed. And I thought that was the best way for me to approach telling the story, which was through, like the same story, which is the Lion King or Hamlet or, the ghost of a parent who has passed, and, dictating what the child's journey should be. I thought that was a strong analogy for me to focus my efforts or focus the songwriting into. So yeah, so there's a little bit of that. I mean, there's still a lot of that left, which is yet to come out. And I'm quite looking forward to it because it's I like it. I think it's very strong. The work is really some of my strongest material, so I'm quite excited.
I'm looking forward to it as well. I didn't know it was incomplete. It seemed pretty complete. So how's it going to be? You're going to add on to the album, or you're going to release it?
Much in the way that I did Small Victories, like 5 songs before, and now we've added 3 songs. Now it feels a little more complete. I think the way I'll do it is I'll release a few singles from the rest of the album and then just drop the entire thing together. And then I would expect people to kind of listen to it from top to bottom. I'm still a fan of that. Like I really look at albums like movies, it's not a TV series, it's a movie. It's like you try and listen to it. You can spare like 45 minutes and just listen to an entire album top to bottom, and then it'll probably give you more context.
That's a good way. Thanks for the instructions of how to do that. Normally I do just scramble up my songs.
I think Adele did that. When she released her last album, she removed the shuffle feature for her album specifically.
You can
so you had to listen to it
some
from
serious
like
level of power for that. Like
of course you got to be Adele to do that. I can only ask people to try and do it. I mean, of course there is no proper way to listen to an album. I mean, like you can do it, but recently I was listening to an album by Sting, which is called The Soul Cages. It's one of my all-time favorite albums now after studying it. And I had no idea, but it was I was drawn to this album because of one song. And then as I started listening to it, I started researching and finding out more about it. And it turned out that it was an album about his father. And I knew that there was some reason why I felt like, I was quite drawn to it. And when I listened to it from the start to the end, it really does provide a kind of experience that is visceral, that is very like it's the track listing of an album is always done in a certain way to make you feel like there's an energy flow, like it starts big, goes small, goes back again, becomes dark, becomes happy, becomes sad. There's always a way. I've always tried to structure my albums that way. Um, but I think this album in particular, will have more of that, like just like the EP did, with the intro and outro and things like that. So
Yeah, your journey is actually very inspiring. And now that you mentioned a lot of things about your albums and the way you want to structure it, there's a lot
yeah.
of story behind that. I had no idea. And I'm glad that we can talk about this before the entire album gets complete, so that the people,
Yeah.
your fans, your listeners, most of my listeners, if they are also your listeners and now will become your listeners, or now they know how to listen to your album.
Yeah, I mean that would be lovely, because I just think maybe it's a dying art. And I will say this about all of my fellow independent music artists, like not to take anything away from Bollywood. Bollywood, the Indian film industry, the way it works is that, okay, cool, these songs are written, objectively for a scene, and this is what this scene requires, this is what this story requires. So we're gonna write it in that way. But independent music artists, we don't have like a overarching like movie, to set these songs into. So the only thing that we can do is kind of have an overarching theme or an idea. The idea is, you take any album, like say the Soul Cages by Sting as well. It's about it is about his father, and it's about how his father was a shipbuilder in Liverpool, and where he grew up, or was it Newcastle? I'm not sure, but and like he addresses that. He addresses the way he was raised as a Catholic, from a Catholic family. And so those themes kind of like weave into the album a lot. Suddenly a priest appears in the lyrics, and talking about how should we bury his father. And it's wonderful, when you kind of really, you can listen to music just by listening to the vibe, right? Like the emotion. Okay, cool, I'm not really paying attention to the lyrics. And then you listen to it again, then you start to see how the lyrics kind of really mesh with what the energies of the songs are like, whether it's a high tempo song or low tempo. So anyway, I put a lot of thought into that, because that's all I can do. I don't have the visual media. Sometimes I might have a music video, but the idea is to kind of just capture it all in the song, and maybe the track listing can help the experience as well.
Did you know about Adele's album thing, that listen from the
I
start to
I
the finish?
just heard about it. I just heard about, like, it was making the rounds on like Instagram. Saying that, oh, Adele has removed the shuffle feature from her album. Like, I just thought that it reinforced the idea that artists do like this. That they do want listeners to kind of have one comprehensive experience when you're listening to an album. The thing is that, okay, cool, we listen to singles and it's fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we're also trying to the short format nature of the world today, besides the point of this whole decreasing attention span, etc.
No,
Why
it's
it's
real.
happening,
It's
why.
real, yeah.
Yeah, it's real because there's such a volume of content out there, right? It's so saturated, the market, that there's only so much time you can spare. Now you got to get to the point in 30 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever it is, the size of a reel or whatever. But there are the greatest of experiences that I've had, at least, are through musical theater or through cinema. I remember, when we all went, like, I mean, just take a simple example of something like Avengers, like the movie, yeah, like Endgame, the movie. The way people feel about that movie even today is because of like 10 years, and 22 movies of hard work. It's like it's a long standing experience. And those are the ones that are the most profound, at least for me. You need to take people on a journey to give to reward them. There's like a setup and then there's a payoff. And for me, the setup is, okay, try listening to 45 minutes of music. It'll start a certain way, and by the time you finish the album, you will definitely feel something profound. If that's the way you like the music, etc. So I mean, I do think that when I go for a musical theater piece, or if I go watch something on at West End or anywhere, NMACC here in Bombay, whatever it is, and if it's a really moving thing, it's moving because you've taken me through specific things. When some character receives some reward at the end, or dies in the end, or whatever it is, you feel something. And that's only because if you started the movie 30 seconds into the ending and the character dies, you won't feel anything. You're not gonna feel anything. So you gotta allow that. And I think music allows that experience on multiple levels. You can have a 3-minute song that makes you feel something, but you can have something even larger if you allow the entire album to wash over you. Anyway, this is just my opinion, but
Well, that's kind
yeah,
of the thing,
it's
I think you can only do that if an artist. I think that you can do that if an artist kind of intends for the entire album to be like one piece.
100%, 100%.
A lot
Very
of
good point.
people,
You're right.
thank you. A lot of people sometimes don't see that. But yeah, if an artist really
Yeah,
wants to do that, I think it's the best thing that a listener kind of gets on board with it and just
yeah.
goes with the flow and listens to the album the way it was intended to be listened to.
No, I think that's a very good point. I think you're right. The intent is very important. Like, I want people to listen to the album this way, so I'm saying it. But there are artists who go like, okay, cool. I just want to do the bops. I want to have bangers, and it's banger after banger after banger, and that's that. And fair enough. There's nothing wrong with that as well. If your purpose is to make people dance, is to make them move, or to make them feel something, in these short bursts of energy, then so be it. I suppose maybe the way that I was raised, like in at least the music that I was, the music that allowed me to decide to become an artist were all very, I guess at the time we had the time, there was not such a volume of content that like there is now. So we were allowed to, watch or listen to things that were longer and not get bored, not check our phone in the middle. I know it seems like I'm an old man yelling at a cloud or whatever, but I do
Nah, I
think
feel
that
the same.
there's a reason why movies still exist. That's why theater still exists, and not everything is just in 30-second little shorts. But yeah,
But I think in the theater part, I think people mostly nowadays, if you notice, they want to watch a movie where it's really, what do you say, like if you're watching the Avengers movie, they're watching it for like the fight sequences. That's my point of view because that's my friends, that's what they mostly focus on. That's
sure.
also kind of why shows like The Office kind of maybe didn't do well. Like some people
Mm-hmm.
had really diverse opinions on it. If you notice,
On the office, as in the
the
UK office, the US office.
Oh, not the UK. I don't even know why they made the UK one. First of all, the US. I like
What do
the
you mean?
original.
Why they made it? That's the original one.
What? Wait,
Yeah.
give me a minute.
It was sure, no problem.
What the heck, dude?
Yeah, the Ricky Gervais, the comedian, wrote The Office,
Okay.
and he invented it. Like he made the show. They released 2 seasons of it. It became one of the most watched shows of all time. And then they took it to the US. And I do think the US one made it its own thing and surpasses the UK one in some ways. But I think the UK Office is the one that all the pranks that Jim plays on Dwight and all is straight from
I
it's
don't.
straight from the UK
Why did
Office.
I
It's
think that
almost
happened?
like yeah. So Ricky Gervais invented. That's why he's the developer of that. He's the
He's
creator of that
also
series.
kind of a freaking genius on the other hand because
He hundred
apparently
percent.
all
Yeah,
of
yeah,
you, at least for me, from my point of view, I discovered the UK Office later on. Hence,
yeah.
assuming
I think
that
most people did. Yeah. Most people did discover that because it was not. I mean, I suppose the UK Office didn't like permeate over to the US as much as the US permeated over across the world.
yeah, it
Like
was.
um, yeah. In fact, they still make versions of The Office. The US was the first one, and then they made now they're making an Australia one. They've made an Indian one. They've made like
I
a
would like to see
German
the
one. Like I
Indian
think there
one.
are a couple of
I would like to see the
yeah.
Indian
I
one.
think it's out. It's here. It's out on Hotstar. I don't know how well it did or whatever, but I think the format is so universal. The feelings are so universal that it makes for good adaptation. So that's why.
Yeah, but so yeah. Wow, that was a discovery kind of moment for me.
Yeah, I'm I'm
We need
I'm
to
I'm
live
kind
long
of
enough.
I'm old enough now to have watched a couple of things. Plus, the other thing is that I am such a big nerd. Like I'm a big geek of pop culture. And I grew up reading comic books and reading murder mystery novels and reading books generally and watching a lot of TV, watching a lot of like movies. I was raised on pop culture, to be perfectly honest, and because I didn't grow up in India, I grew up in Dubai. I was kind of watching a lot of Bollywood stuff. I was watching a lot of like syndicated American television, MTV, Channel V, all of that stuff. So my education in pop culture, started when I was very, very, very young, as it is the case for most people these days. But yeah, I was really into it. So I've grown up watching a lot of stuff, and I have a keen interest in the way that culture flows, like from place to place. So yeah, it is interesting to me.
So why I was talking about the office thing was people's attention spans. No background
Right.
music, no sound effects, no action, just people talking.
Just dialogue, yeah.
It's acquired taste.
I mean, I think it's
A lot of
I
people
think it's
didn't like
done
it.
well because the comedy was really off its time. Like the kind of jokes that were being made, the kind of self-awareness. I mean, the whole fact that it's shot like the cinema verite style, fly on the wall, whatever you want to call it. Like the characters know that they're being filmed, that they're in like a production of some sort. And I think that was like the first time that people saw it in such a like a comedic way. And then you have like such iconic characters
It was
like
uh,
Michael, Jim,
it was a
etc.
nice concept. I really like it. It was
Yeah, it's really good. In fact, you were saying this thing about the Marvel movies. I mean, like my friends and I used to always say that DC movies are like action movies. You stay for the action. But Marvel movies, you stay for the dialogue between the action set pieces. Like for me, those are the most fun parts when like Captain America or Iron Man are sparring with each other. Just like all the jokes, like like a lot. They used to say that if you want to make a comedy, don't make an actual comedy, make an action movie, and then slip the comedy into that. And I really feel like um, the Marvel movies are just like really funny, and like I think the reason why people come back to them are not just because of the set pieces. The set pieces are amazing, the action is incredible, but it's the jokes in between those little moments that you care about these characters, and I think those
100%,
are it's quite lovely.
100%.
Yeah,
That helps you
yeah,
connect with the characters as well.
100%. Yeah,
And that kind of becomes a part of the character's personality, and I really love that.
yeah, yeah, for
I
sure.
wouldn't consider myself a DC or a Marvel geek, but I know a thing or two about it. But I like
No, no, not
superheroes.
at all.
Okay. Speaking
Of
of
course.
geekiness, speaking of
Yeah,
geekiness, your podcast, the Geek Fruit. How
yeah.
did that
Geek
name?
Fruit.
How did you
Yes.
get to the name first of all? How did that name get to you?
There's no, often people have asked, there's no real good story behind it. I think we were just looking for something that wasn't taken and we could get the URL for. And my friends and I, we were just like, okay, cool. We came up with a bunch of names. Somebody said Geek Fruit. We were like, cool, let's just go with that. And it's stuck. And I think it's one of those things that, sometimes you have a great name and the great name kind of defines what you're going to do with the company or with the work that you do. And sometimes you just assign a name and then it gathers meaning over time. So I think for us it's been the latter. And yeah, it was just something that Jishnu, Guha, Dinkar Dwivedi, and myself, these guys are my best friends. We started this a long time ago, because at the time it was such a big heyday for pop culture. Like three things were happening that really inspired me to say, okay, cool, we should do something in this. Which is that Game of Thrones had become this absolute riot, and everybody was talking about Game of Thrones, and it was such a big moment for pop culture and fantasy, where it was not just fantasy fans or nerds or geeks or whatever watching Game of Thrones. It was like everybody universally were tuned into something that had dragons and zombies and magic and spells and all of that stuff, right? um, so that was one thing. The second thing was the Avengers. Yeah, the Avengers had come out, and Marvel, the movies that we just spoke about were doing so well, and we loved them so much. And we were like, cool, maybe it is time to talk about these comic books that we grew up reading, now have such a amazing adaptation in the film world. And then the third thing, which was probably the most important thing for me, which was that in 2014, um, they announced, in 2015 or 2014, yeah, was when Star Wars, A New Hope, not A New Hope, sorry, The Force Awakens came back, and they announced that, hey, we're gonna have episode 7, 8, and 9. Disney bought Lucasfilm, and so they had the rights to create these new films. And yeah, and it was the most exciting thing for me because I grew up watching Star Wars, and it's probably my favorite thing on the planet. Like Star Wars is so important to me and my world and the way I think, because I was really moved by it as a kid. and I absolutely love it. It makes me feel like a child, and it's something I still love and hold very close to my heart. Even though the movies are not great, not all of them are amazing. It's got more misses than hits.
I think you would.
But it's something that is so personal to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say you might leave the meeting after I say this, but I haven't watched a single Star Wars movie in my entire life.
A lot of people find it very important to tell me that, that, oh no, Tejas, I've not watched Star Wars. And that's totally fine. It's totally okay. I think Star Wars is very, apart from the fact that I love it, apart from the fact that I think George Lucas, the creator, is one of the greatest minds and one of the most influential people in technology today. I think that's the thing that people don't really know about Star Wars, right? Like they see it as this big franchise with lightsabers and da and that's
action
it.
stuff.
But I think the real legacy of Star Wars is not, and this is the thing I tell everybody, is that if we can use digital cameras today to make movies, it's because of Star Wars. If we have great sound, Dolby, not Dolby, just like the way we produce sound these days, SFX, it's because Star Wars did it. If we have animation and visual effects, it was because of Star Wars. If you have sync licensing, it's because of Star Wars. If you have a toy industry, an empire where toys are made in the way that they are made, it's because of Star Wars. And I say this because when Star Wars was created, it had to, because of the effects it needed, it invented things like what maybe you may have heard of, but it started things like Skywalker sound. Like when Ben Burt, the sound designer who made the sound for all the robots and R2D2 and etc. When he made that movie, the sound effects for that movie, the next year at the Oscars, they never had a sound design category, for best sound design.
Yeah, like it.
They just gave him an Oscar and they told him, you did such an amazing job, here's an Oscar. And then the next year after that, they created the category for sound.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah.
VFX, they invented so many different types of styles of VFX. We have VFX today because it kind of pushed the envelope so much for that, for the making of the films. The toy industry, oh my gosh, it created like a toy empire that people actually don't know this a lot about. But the action figures that we loved as kids and whatever it is was created because Star Wars dominated that sector in such a way that competitors needed something else. So they created things like He-Man and they created Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and blah, 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 whatever it is. So anyway, Lucasfilm has done a lot for video games. The other thing is that Attack of the Clones Episode 2 was the first movie that was shot digitally. Like it was the first movie that was shot digitally ever. And it was because George Lucas said, I think film will always exist, but digital photography needs to exist in a way that is usable, and we can start making movies on it because it's too expensive otherwise. And so he propelled that industry forward with digital cameras. And that's why we have it in such a big way that was the first movie ever shot on digital. The other ideas, the story ideas, prequels, we only have, prequels were made popular because of Star Wars. And yeah, so, just like a number of ways that he pushed technology forward. Now, instead of green screen, they use something called the volume, which is an LED screen, which you can shoot in front of, which will create backdrops and things like that. That was also propelled by shows like The Mandalorian, which are from Star Wars. So they've always been aggressive in advancing technology for cinema and for VFX, for sound, for gaming. And a lot of the things that we experience in the day-to-day world have come to us by virtue of for us who love cinema and things like that, it has been pushed forward because of, because they needed to. The necessity in making movies like Star Wars has done that. Not to disregard other people's, involvement, people like Spielberg or whatever it is, but Star Wars was a huge...
No, really, I actually, thankfully, now that I know of it, I realize that how important some things are, more than just for what they are made. They helped fuel many other future generations of filmmakers.
100%.
Yeah.
It's not just, it's not even just a... the thing is when people talk about The Godfather, The Godfather is the greatest movie of all time, blah, blah, blah. I love that movie, like, but it's not my favorite movie ever. Like, I think it's one of the best movies, but it's not my favorite movie. But I have seen it. And when I ask people about Star Wars, when I tell them about Star Wars, they go like, "Oh, why should I watch that?" And the reason to watch Star Wars, even just like the first few films, like the ones which came out in 1977 onwards, um, I think it's just a cultural touch point. It's like a milestone in cinema that you should watch to experience, just to understand. Like, Godfather may not be my favorite movie of all time, but I've watched it because I wanted to understand why people love it so much and why people resonate with it. So that's the reason why I'd ask people to watch Star Wars, but otherwise I don't bother anymore. I just go like, if you want to watch it, it's fine. But
watch Star Wars now.
It's so important to me and my life, and the way, it's permeated into my music. Like the way that I write music these days is so influenced. Not these days. I like the way I've always thought about music is, we spoke about like how I want the album to feel like a movie. A lot of this is because movies have influenced my music more than other music has in many ways. I mean, there's a song which I have called Lead, which is so inspired. I mean, like, it feels very, very much inspired by the Star Wars theme. When it starts, the music, it has these big horns, this big fanfare. I've always felt like it's a very Star Wars thing, and I'm quite proud of it because it makes me feel very like good about, okay, cool, that this influence was real on my life. Yeah.